I thought the ring he gave me was chosen with love. But when I found the receipt tucked inside his jacket, it had another woman's name engraved. Now every smile he gives me feels like a lie, and I can't decide whether to confront him or wait for his secret to destroy itself. It was late evening, the kind of quiet where the ticking clock feels louder than usual. I was folding laundry, moving through his clothes with the same rhythm I had followed countless times before. My hands slipped into the pocket of his jacket, searching for coins or scraps of paper. Instead, I pulled out a folded slip, thin, crisp, and too deliberate to be forgotten. I opened it, expecting something ordinary. But the moment my eyes caught the words, my breath stalled. It wasn't just a receipt. It was for the ring he had given me. My heart should have swelled with warmth, but instead it froze. The engraving line was clear. Another woman's name. Not mine. Not even close. I stared at it, the letters burning into me, each one a betrayal carved in ink. My fingers trembled and I dropped the paper onto the bed, then snatched it back up as if afraid someone else might see. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I sat there, clutching the receipt, wondering if I had been living in a dream that wasn't mine. The jacket lay beside me, innocent in its silence, but I couldn't look at it without feeling sick. That piece of paper had changed everything. When he walked in later, carrying his usual smile, I couldn't see it the same way. That smile had once been my comfort, my safe place. Now it looked rehearsed, like a mask he wore to keep me from asking questions. He kissed my forehead, asked about dinner, and laughed at something on his phone. But I noticed the way his eyes darted away when mine lingered too long. He avoided holding my gaze as though afraid I might see through him. I remembered how in the past his smile had lit up entire rooms. It had been the reason I believed in us, the reason I said yes when he slipped the ring onto my finger. But now every curve of his lips felt staged. I caught myself studying him, searching for cracks in the performance. "Are you all right?" he asked casually, pouring himself a glass of water. "I'm fine," I replied, forcing my voice steady. But inside I was unraveling. The receipt burned in my pocket, a secret I wasn't ready to reveal. His smile lingered, but it no longer reached me. It was a stranger's smile and I couldn't trust it anymore. That night we sat across from each other at the dining table. The clinking of cutlery echoed louder than our words. He spoke about work, about a colleague's mistake, about traffic on the way home. I nodded, offered short replies, but my mind was elsewhere. Every time he looked at me, I wondered if he knew I had found the receipt. Did he sense the shift in my silence? His voice carried on, but I barely heard it. I was too busy watching the way he avoided certain topics, how quickly he changed the subject when I asked about his day. The food grew cold between us. I pushed it around my plate, pretending to eat. He didn't notice, or maybe he chose not to. The silence between us wasn't just quiet. It was heavy, pressing down on me, filling the room with questions I couldn't ask. At one point he reached for my hand across the table. I let him, but the warmth felt foreign. My mind screamed at me to pull away, yet I stayed still, trapped in the performance of a perfect dinner. The next afternoon I met my closest friend for coffee. She leaned in, her voice low, her eyes sharp. "I don't want to upset you," she began, "but I've noticed something about him." I froze, my cup halfway to my lips. She hesitated, then continued. "He's different. Distracted. I saw him last week and he seemed nervous, like he was hiding something." Her words pierced me, confirming what I had already begun to suspect. I wanted to dismiss it, to defend him, but the receipt in my bag weighed too heavily. "Maybe it's just stress," I said weakly, trying to convince myself more than her. She shook her head. "I don't know. Just be careful. Don't ignore the signs." I nodded, forcing a smile, but inside I was crumbling. Her warning wasn't just concern. It was a mirror reflecting the doubts I had tried to bury. I walked home with her words echoing in my mind, each step heavier than the last. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our relationship. The laughter, the promises, the ring on my finger. All of it felt tainted now. The receipt sat on the nightstand, a silent witness to my torment. I picked it up again, tracing the letters of her name. Who was she? Why was her name engraved on the ring meant for me? I thought back to the day he proposed. The way he knelt, the way his voice shook, the way I cried with joy. Had it all been a lie? Or had I been living in someone else's story all along? I turned over, clutching the pillow, trying to quiet the storm inside me. But the questions wouldn't stop. Every smile, every touch, every word replayed in my mind now twisted with doubt. By dawn I had made a decision. I wouldn't confront him yet. Not until I knew the full truth. I would watch, listen and wait. The receipt had opened a door I couldn't close and now I had to walk through it no matter where it led. The morning after my sleepless night, I moved through the house with a quiet determination. I kept my distance, watching him from corners, listening for slips. That afternoon as I passed the hallway I heard his voice, low, softer than usual, almost tender. He was on the phone. I froze, pressing myself against the wall, the sound of his words drifting toward me. "I miss you," he whispered, his tone carrying a warmth I hadn't heard directed at me in weeks. Then came the name. A name I didn't recognize, spoken with affection as if it belonged to someone who mattered deeply to him. My chest tightened. The receipt hadn't been a mistake. The woman was real, alive in his life, not just a ghost from the past. I leaned closer, straining to catch more, but his voice dropped further, almost conspiratorial. I heard laughter, soft and intimate, before the call ended abruptly. When he stepped out of the room, his face was calm, but his eyes carried a secret. He didn't notice me standing there, or maybe he pretended not to. I turned away quickly, my hands trembling, my mind racing. The truth was no longer hidden. It was unfolding right in front of me. The next day I couldn't bear the weight of uncertainty. I took the receipt from my drawer, folded it neatly and slipped it into my purse. My heart pounded as I walked into the jewelry store listed at the top. The shop smelled faintly of polished wood and perfume. A man behind the counter greeted me warmly. "How can I help you today?" I placed the receipt on the glass. "This was purchased here," I said, my voice steady though my hands shook. He glanced at it, then smiled knowingly. "Ah yes, I remember." He was very particular about the engraving. Wanted it perfect. My stomach dropped. "Do you recall what name he asked for?" I asked carefully. The jeweler nodded. "Of course." He repeated it several times, made sure we got the spelling right. He seemed very thoughtful. I forced a smile, thanked him and walked out. The sunlight outside felt harsh, almost blinding. My worst fears had been confirmed. The ring wasn't chosen for me, it was chosen for her. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching my purse, trying to steady my breathing. The city moved around me, people laughing, cars honking, but I felt detached, as if I were watching life from behind a glass wall. A week later, I sat in a cafe trying to distract myself with coffee and a book. The hum of conversation filled the air, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept circling back to the receipt, the phone call, the jeweler's words. Then a woman approached my table. She was elegant, with sharp eyes that seemed to study me. "You're engaged to him, aren't you?" she asked softly. I blinked, startled. "Yes, I am." She smiled faintly, almost pitying. "He talks about you. But not the way you think." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" She leaned closer, her voice low. "He's not who you believe he is. He's promised things to others. Things he shouldn't." Her words cut through me like glass. I wanted to ask more, but she stood abruptly, gathering her bag. "Be careful," she said before walking away. I sat frozen, her presence lingering like a shadow. Who was she? Friend? A rival? Or the woman whose name was engraved on the ring? My coffee grew cold, untouched, as I replayed her words over and over. That night, driven by desperation, I searched his study. The room smelled faintly of ink and dust, the shelves lined with books he rarely touched. My eyes scanned the desk, the drawers, until I found one locked. I hesitated, then pulled at it until it gave way. Inside were letters, neatly folded, tied with ribbon. Photographs slipped out, scattering across the floor. I knelt, picking them up one by one. Each picture told a story I hadn't been part of. Him smiling with another woman, his arm around her, his eyes lit with affection. The letters were worse. Promises of forever, words of devotion, plans for a future that didn't include me. My hands shook as I read, the ink blurring through tears. He had built a parallel life, hidden behind locked drawers and secret calls. I wasn't his only love. I was just one chapter in a book he was writing for someone else. I sat there for hours, surrounded by evidence of betrayal, my heart breaking with each letter I unfolded. The study felt colder, the walls closing in, as if the room itself knew the truth I had uncovered. By the time he returned home, I had gathered the letters and photographs, tucked them back into the drawer and locked it again. My face was calm, my voice steady, but inside I was burning. He kissed me lightly, asked about dinner, moved through the house as if nothing had changed. I watched him, every gesture, every word, wondering how he could live so easily with lies. I wanted to confront him, to throw the evidence in his face, to demand answers. But something held me back. It wasn't fear, it was strategy. I realized I needed more proof, more certainty before I revealed what I knew. So I waited. I smiled when he smiled, laughed when he laughed, played the role of the loving fiancé. But inside I was gathering strength, preparing for the moment when his lies would collapse under the weight of truth. That night, as I lay in bed beside him, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. The receipt, the phone call, the jeweler, the woman in the cafe, the hidden drawer, they were pieces of a puzzle. And soon the picture would be complete. It was a warm evening, the kind where laughter carried easily through the air. His family had gathered for dinner, the table crowded with dishes and voices overlapping in cheerful tones. I sat beside him, smiling politely, though my mind was elsewhere. I had become skilled at wearing masks. He was telling a story, animated, his hands moving as he spoke. Then without warning he said her name. Not mine, hers. It slipped out casually, as if she belonged in the memory he was sharing. The room fell silent. Forks paused midair, eyes darted toward me, then back to him. He froze, realizing too late what he had said. I forced a smile, steadying my voice. Who? I asked lightly, though inside my chest tightened. He stammered, fumbling for words. Oh, it's nothing. Just a colleague. The silence lingered, heavy and awkward, before conversation resumed. But the damage was done. His slip had cracked the facade and everyone had felt it. I kept my composure, but inside I knew the truth was unraveling faster than he could control. That night I couldn't shake the sound of her name. It echoed in my mind, refusing to fade. I needed more than suspicion, I needed proof. I began searching quietly, moving through his papers, his laptop, his drawers. It was late, the house silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. My hands trembled as I typed into his computer, following trails he thought were hidden. And then I found it. A bank account I hadn't known existed. Transactions lined the screen. Gifts, dinners, hotel stays. None of them involved me. Each entry was a dagger, cutting deeper into the illusion I had lived in. I sat back, staring at the numbers, the dates, the places. It was undeniable. He had built another life, funded by secrets, sustained by lies. My breath came shallow, but with it came clarity. This was the final piece I needed. The receipt, the photographs, the letters, they had all pointed to betrayal. But this account was proof carved in numbers, impossible to deny. I closed the laptop, my hands steady now. The evidence gave me strength. Revenge wasn't about anger. It was about reclaiming my dignity. In the days that followed, I played my role with precision. I smiled when he smiled, laughed at his jokes, touched his hand at the right moments. To him I was the loving fiancé, devoted and trusting. But inside I was preparing. My silence became my weapon. Every word I didn't speak, every question I didn't ask, was a step closer to the storm I was building. I began organizing quietly, copies of the receipt, photographs of the letters, screenshots of the bank account. I tucked them away, hidden in places he would never look. At night, I lay beside him, listening to his steady breathing. He thought I was asleep, but my eyes were open, staring into the dark. My mind was sharp, calculating. There was a strange calm in the deception. Pretending gave me control. He believed he was safe, but I knew the truth. And soon he would face it. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. The house was quiet, sunlight streaming through the curtains. I sat at the table, the evidence spread before me. The receipt, the photographs, the letters, the bank records. He walked in, smiling, carrying 2 cups of tea. Here, he said, placing one in front of me. I didn't take it. Instead, I looked at him, my voice steady. Sit down. He frowned, confused, but obeyed. His eyes flicked to the papers and I saw the moment recognition hit. His face paled, his smile faltered. What is this? He asked, though his voice shook. This, I said calmly, is the truth you thought I'd never find. He reached for the papers, but I pulled them back. Don't, I warned. You don't get to hide anymore. He stammered excuses, stress, misunderstandings, mistakes. His words tumbled over each other, desperate and hollow. But I didn't flinch. I watched him crumble, his lies collapsing under the weight of evidence. You promised me forever, I said quietly. But forever was never mine, was it? He buried his face in his hands, silent now. The room felt heavy, the air thick with the ruins of what we had been. I stood, gathering the papers, my voice calm. "I'm done," I said simply. He looked up, his eyes wide, pleading. "Please, wait. We can fix this." But I shook my head. No. Love without honesty is nothing but illusion. And I won't live in illusions anymore. I walked to the door, my steps steady, my heart lighter than it had been in weeks. Behind me, he sat frozen, surrounded by the wreckage of his own deceit. Outside, the air was cool, the sky wide and open. I breathed deeply, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. My revenge wasn't in anger. It was in reclaiming my life, in leaving him to face the ruins he had built. As I walked away, I reflected on the lesson I had learned. Trust is fragile, love is sacred, and honesty is the foundation that holds it together. Without it, everything crumbles. I chose dignity over despair, strength over silence. And in that choice I found freedom.